Talkshoe. Recorded live.
Hello, this is Mike. Once again, it's Old Religion Dystopia, Knowing versus Belief, and we got MK Davis with us again, and a little bit of things of business here. Just a reminder, folks, the new YouTube channel is up, so please go out there and the YouTube world and subscribe and listen. Thank you for those that have been. And if you can remember with this, with Talkshoe, click the follow this so that I can inform you when the next shows are up and the recordings and that kind of thing. So, anyways, MK has his own YouTube channel, and let's see if I can say it right this time, because last time I didn't. It's Green Wave 2010 FB, and I put last time I said 2010th, but it's 2010 FB. So it's Green Wave.
Yeah, right. FB stands for football. It's an older YouTube channel that I used to put football videos up, but my son moved away from that town, so I went to another town, so I moved all my Bigfoot stuff over there. But it still says FB.
All right.
It couldn't mean finding Bigfoot.
Football. So, are you a big fan of a particular team?
Well, I was. He was in West Point, Mississippi, and they had a championship team, and I was going up there and getting on the sidelines and all those really good championship games, and I really enjoyed it. So I put together this little channel for them. But the Bigfoot stuff, it's just left them far behind. They're on there somewhere, but way down the line.
My dad, we used a second All-State tailback in back in Ohio. This is way back when, and back in 1950, he had first he got a scholarship in a university there in Texas, but he didn't like the studying. He wanted to play football, so he joined the Army, hoping to play for the Army team, because back then that was the team to play for. A few months later, after he joined the Army, though, they had the Korean War, and he didn't send him over there, so instead of playing football. And what a nightmare that is.
History caught up with.
Yeah, and he's caught up with the family, too. I can tell you it's affected everybody in my family as well. The other thing, too, is MC Davis has the Davis Report, and you can check that out, the Davis Report .wordpress.com, and it's in their information box, and it'll also be when we download this on YouTube. That information will be there too. So, and so far, the little conversations that I've had with MK, I'm starting to really like him as a person. With this little short conversation we had before the recording here, was encouraging to hear your willingness to look at the world, from different angles, let's put it that way. And I like that about stuff, man. I like anybody who's willing to actually critically think about what's going on around them and not to take too much, not to get too emotional about it. You know what I mean?
It's always good to see all the dimensions of what's going on, to get a proper understanding of it. A lot of times we only see in two dimensions. It's all they give us. What's on the front of a newspaper or a TV screen. It's good to know the behind the scenes stuff, and like we were talking about earlier, it's a bit of comfort, when you understand why things are as wacky as they are.
Right. Well, it's kind of ironic. I mean, you first learn about this stuff, a lot of fear. At least I experienced it. But as you mature in your knowledge and understanding, you kind of, and maybe it's, I don't know, it's a psychological thing too. Definitely is the fact, you kind to, as resignation, if you say, okay, well, this is how it is, from what I can understand. not much I can do about it except understand it and make my choice. Do I follow the herd or do I not? Now, I choose not to because I don't, but for a lot of reasons. One of it is because my creator, I don't think he made me to follow anyways. You know what I mean? I can see like
you wouldn't feel comfortable doing it.
No, I mean I don't think I have a choice because I look at my siblings and like one is like, yeah, I love her to death, my sister, and she was class president in high school and prom queen and also that in college and just and we're just like two polar opposites in just the 3 years of difference. And why is that? I don't think there's much choice in the matter.
Maybe it's not a choice. Maybe you're driven from within to go down a different road.
Yeah, and if you try to fight it, Dave, okay, you'll get you know what it's like. You imagine you probably experienced yourself, and you fight being who you are. Well, it becomes a miserable experience, And instead of enjoying what you've been given, and there's a lot of reasons. We live in a world where there's a lot of reasons to. We could, if we focus completely on the negative and how whatever we're oppressed or enslaved or this or that. You know what I mean? Or I'm a wage slave. Or I have to go to work again today. That kind of thing. Or if you just follow your own path wherever it may take you, and maybe there won't be a lot of money in it, and there won't be a lot of recognition, but there's a lot more peace inside. And although as you get older, we talked about the older you get, the harder it is to sleep at night. It's still it's more biological than it is what's going on between your ears. So I'd rather follow my own path, regardless of what the consequences are. And it does, as it does cause a little bit of isolation. So, and you'll get a lot of criticism and a lot of people, challenge you and, calling you this, that, or the other. But you just have to just say, I don't have much choice in what path I'm going to go. So either I just go with it or no.
It's better. It's better than living on the moon. That's really isolation. I've often thought about what the astronauts would have done if they'd been stranded up there. They call home every day and ask the same question. How's so-and-so doing? After a while, they let the phone ring and they don't pick it up anymore. What can you do when you're totally in total isolation?
You're never going to find anybody either. Let's rephrase that. If you choose to only associate with people that totally agree with everything that your worldview, you're really going to limit your opportunities for friendship. Is that worth it? It's sometimes
the mind is a muscle. I mean, you have to work it.
Right.
And it grows. It makes new circuits, and it expands the abilities to compute because of challenges. And if you never got any challenges, you'll become stale.
Yeah.
You have to push and shove and sometimes scratch and claw. And you have to go out and search things out to prove to your own self that you have this right. And all of that is it's like no computer can do. It grows in its ability to think and ability to function.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
And for those muscles to develop, I think you always have to be willing to say, ask the questions, the critical questions, and be always willing to admit that you're wrong. Because you know what I've discovered after almost 50 years on this planet is that I've been wrong just about everything. So, I might have at best half right about something, but
Well, there's nothing wrong with being wrong,
no.
But what you don't want to do, you don't want to fail to be right.
Yeah.
And that's where outside pressure to conform makes many people fail to be correct when they could have been correct because they were afraid of that pressure.
Well, peer pressure is incredible, and with all the different experiments out there, and how people are willing, basically, to go against their better judgment over and over again, based on what, for instance, the appeal to authority. So-and-so in the lab coat or with the PhD in front of their name or behind their name, whatever. People are willing to, pretty much surrender their sovereignty and their own better judgment, instead of letting, saying, no, I'm not going to conform to this. No, I'm not going to comply. I'm not going to press that button that's going to electrocute some guy, or, pull that trigger that's going to kill some guy. So, it's one of those things you have, integrity is one of the most important things that a man can develop in his life, to the best of his ability, even understanding what that means, being true to oneself and being true to what is right. And that has a tendency.
It's the shame of it all is by the time a person becomes the person that he wants to be, age has encroached.
Oh yeah.
We're not here that long. That's why typically over the many thousands of years that we always venerate our older people. But I'm afraid that's the generation we're living in now is losing sight of that. They're it's a generation that thinks they're born with experience. Wisecracking, 10-year-olds, all of that, sub-adults, in times past, prior to this generation, challenging an older person, was just not the thing to do. It was almost unheard of. The person who had genuinely been through life and learned a lot of the places to go and not to go. And so by being like they are, they're destined to go make those mistakes in a plethora of ways. And I feel uneasy about this generation. I really do. I hope they find their way.
Well, I think at this point, the only way for them to do that is to say you're going to have to pull away from a lot of the systems out there that have been designed to do just that, to corrupt you and distort your perspective and your point of view and who you really are. And that would mean, pull away from Hollywood, television, a lot of the the things out there that are designed to actually enslave you and to keep you from realizing how important. I mean, like when he says, like you said, elders, how important that is, and how many of us. I mean, the destruction of the family. I'm one of those people. My generation, in particular. I look at my parents' generation. My father just died a couple of years ago. My mom's she's going to be 86 this year. And I'm still close to her. As much as we drive each other nuts, she's my mom, but
if I was a bet man, all she probably has to do to tell you something is probably just look at you, or maybe just clear her throat. There's a lot of things. Communications go back and forth in ways that we never could imagine. Just by a quick look, when you know someone that well, and there's this much respect about what their thoughts are and what they think, and then do you connect in ways that you can't really put a finger on. But your mother, and you know exactly what pushes her buttons one way or the other, and she knows you.
Oh, she definitely knows my buttons.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's what's kind of missing now. That type of closeness or intimacy. it's someone can just clear their throat and you know exactly what they didn't have to use words. That's gone just about.
Yeah.
I worry about this generation. This as my generation begins to fade, I see that this one's got those troubles, and whenever they take completely over, they're not going to know certain things and what you do.
Yeah.
How to act.
Yeah, it's clear. It's very clear that we're in a pickle. So, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I mean, who knows? Gay, if this turns out to be at a good time and you enjoy it, maybe we'll make a series of just talking about whatever.
Well,
you know what I mean? It seems like we can talk about whatever, but let's go back to this. Some of your research on cryptozoology, if you're interested.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I guess we'll start out with the. Well, first of all, I went to school for environmental science. I was always a guy who was into ecology. I ended up starting a job business that I no longer can do, but it was dealing with greenscaping and trying to work with developers and preserve lands or restore it. A lot of the native fauna from my region. I know a lot about these things like about the invasive species and dealing with that in the Great Lakes region as far as zebra mussels and all sorts of different types of fish now and goldfish and carp and everything else. So now saying that, and I'm not saying that I know what I'm talking about here, but you have a very interesting story about a salamander. And that intrigues me. As a young man, I used to, when we still had them around, I think it was a 4-line or 5-line, something line salamanders. These little ones are black with a red stripe or a kind of an orange stripe on them. And then there was the tiger salamanders, and I used to catch them and mud pug we used to catch them all the time as a child. And we're talking about the 70s. And how things have changed since the 70s all around me. Not for the better, in my opinion. But back in the day, you had a chance to see, I guess, Northern California has some kind of unique salamander. Can you tell us a little more about this and then what your experience was, if you're interested? And if you're not interested, we'll go to a different subject. But I find this interesting and very logical.
Yeah,
possible. Put that way.
We were at a campsite called Louse Camp, and it's kind of a famous Louse Camp. That camp is famous in Bigfoot lore. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin camped there. Peter Byrne is camped there. John Green is camped there, and they did this camp there. All the luminaries in Bigfoot at that time at Louse Camp. And we had to walk in there. That gate was closed, and then they had a big slide. So we had to kind of maneuver, like mountain hikers to get over that. But we made it in there, and I went over there to I think I was going to wash something out in the stream. It was Bluff Creek, and there was a deep pool there. It was probably 10 feet deep, and the water's just as snow melts, crystal clear.
Now, can I interject? Can I interject just a little there, just out of testimony?
Sure.
As a testimony on my part, when I lived in Northern California and Chico and was a forest firefighter and did stuff, and Mendocino and all that kind of stuff, as far as supporting fires back in the late 80s, I have no idea what it's like now, but even in Orville where the flooding is, there was a stream, and it was quite common for folks to swim in these, and they actually take baths in these big pools that you're talking about. So I know what you're talking about. It's a very interesting waterways, and where you have like shallow babbling brooks, and all of a sudden there's a big pool. A lot of that with the lava flows and big rocks and all that kind of stuff. So it is what you're saying, there's foundation.
Except for the disturbance on top of the water, it's hard to tell how deep it is. Just looking in there, because the water is so clear that you can actually. It looks like the bottom is just right there. Later on, my son got in there, and it was about 10 feet deep. But I was looking in there, and I saw what I took to be a fish. And this fish was about 3 feet long. And I watched, and I thought I could see fins, moving. But it had this unusual appearance. It had a mottled color, like kind of a pinkish, pink and black. And it was making its way across the bottom. And I came back and I told my friend down the road, said, there's a really big fish over there in that pool. Well, Wolf Creek don't have big fish in it. I mean, the biggest fish I've ever seen in it was about 6 inches long. So he said later on, he told me he thought I was talking about, a 6 or 8 inch long fish, So he didn't really, he didn't get excited about it. I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. We went on up another creek called Notice Creek. And we got up there a little ways, and I saw this salamander about a foot long come streaking right across the, top of the water. I got good video and pictures of him, giant Pacific salamander. And I said, Don, that's what I saw. That's the exact coloration and model appearance. That what I took to be fins must have been his little stubby legs. And I realized that I had seen, the legendary giant Pacific salamanders, the ones that truly are giant, which the Indians have said they're in there, and different people have seen them, but they don't have documentation. And I didn't take any pictures. When we got back from Notice Creek, I went straight over to that pool. It was not there. They're land and sea. They can climb out of the water and go across land, with no problem. So it got out of that pool. To me, I have a lot of regrets. And whenever I told him that it was a salamander that I saw, he starts kicking himself in the rear for not, taking me serious and going on over there to look. Because it was as much of a discovery as maybe perhaps Bigfoot evidence. If you look at geologically, if you look at where Bluff Creek is and where those giant salamanders have been sighted, it's right directly the same latitude across from Japan over there, where they had the giant salamanders that you can look at. That they're more common, but their environment is almost identical to what's over there in Northern California, and they even look alike. The giant Pacific is normally a one that's about a foot and a half. You think it's normally the maximum what you'd see, but every once in a while there have these really big ones that get several feet long, and that's what I saw. I saw about I'm guessing that just looking through the water, it looked like it was about 3 feet long. I would have swam down there and got it if I had any. I didn't know anything much about them, so I didn't realize that what I was looking at.
Right. Well, it's very probable for many reasons. That could literally be, like you say, there's no reason for me to see why Native Americans would lie about it. What advantage would they have? B, when we study invasive species like something like the snakefish or something, is it improbable that someone in Northern California, maybe some folks that came from Japan, decided to bring some with them for whatever reason, maybe for medicinal reasons or whatever. It doesn't. There's many reasons why it could be, and
that's always a possibility.
Yeah, and here's the thing. When my research in my own area, and what's known as Maumee River. It's at least at one time, and I guess still is at this point, although things changed so drastically. It was the walleye capital of the world, or is the walleye capital of the world. Anyways, back in the day when they first built Fort Meigs and the soldiers there, now we're talking about the 18 something, say early 1800s, like or 1900s, I guess it would be like 1820, something like that, right? 1850. No, it's more like 1850, 1860, that around about the same time as around the Civil War. Don't quote me on that part. But the big part is what I do know is was reading the journals that there was a time when like the sturgeon that ran up the Maumee River were legendary. They were 4 or 5 feet long. When they had the fish runs in the spring, the soldiers talked about how you could walk across the river from one end to the other, and it's not some small river at the mouth. On these fish, whether the legendary the blue pike, the fact that prior to farming and sedimentation of the river, the bay, the mouth of the Maumee River was 70 feet deep and had its own native wild rice. So I guess my point in all this and bringing up, there's so many variables, but one thing is that what used to be is not today. And when it comes to ecology in particular, it was so much more, a lot more variance in size in different species. And it's very, very, very probable, strong. Some would say maybe more probable than many other things that we discover, that you would see something.
Well, there's also in that same river system, the Native Americans say there exists a giant crayfish. It's like a lobster. And of course, I haven't seen one of those, but they say they're in there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. I know that area right in there in the Bluff Creek area at one time was the one of the world's big deposits of cinnabar, which is mercury ore. And when and then later on the miners took advantage of the cinnabar and refined mercury from it and used the mercury to refine the gold, get the gold dust out of the soil because mercury will combine with gold, and then you evaporate the mercury out and then you have the gold. But it's very not very environmentally friendly, But it makes me wonder if that may be a factor in some of the, unusual sizes or unusual nature of things.
Well,
I haven't had all of that in there.
And nature itself too is like if the environment's right, if the food supply is right, animals will keep on growing. Fish will keep on growing. Reptiles will keep on growing, and it's known that even amphibians will keep on growing. So there's a lot of variables, very logical, that you saw something huge. These pools, again, you think about their little biomes of micro ecologies, where easily a mile down upstream, but downstream to all these places, they easily could have had even different, type, variances of the salamander itself. So maybe upstream, maybe 2 miles or smaller, maybe downstream they're a little bit bigger, that kind of thing. So genetics does play a little bit of a role.
There was a professor from Chicago who contacted me, and he wanted me to take him down there and show him. But something happened, and we weren't able to do it. His name was Angelo Caparella, and he had several new species under his belt, discoveries, different birds and things, and he wanted to try to find that giant salamander, which for whatever reason, I forgot the reason, but it was something in his family that came up, and we weren't able to go. So, but that's still, needs doing in the fact that he thought that it could be accomplished. I feel that it could. A person spent the time down there and just made their way on up out of the reach of a lot of people, and I think that you'd be real surprised at what you find on that creek.
Oh yeah, it's just. I know my personal experience. Like one of my personal experiences was when I went into a Federal Reserve, which I shouldn't have been. But sometimes you're just like, yeah, take that chance because I just wanted to see. So in this Federal Reserve, it's a colony of bald eagles, and they're very rare in my area these days, but they've been trying to make a comeback. And, in that they had really some birds and species that I never had a chance to see anywhere else. And, the unfortunate reality is human contact is an issue. Now, I have this thing, I've learned about Agenda 21 and its new appearances of it and what the UN is up to and what our own elite here in this country and gobbling up all the land, and they have all sorts of, there's areas, vast areas where they don't want anybody but themselves to play in. And in some ways, I understand because of my own experience and my understanding of what human contact with the ecology is. Now, the average Joe, and like yourself, I'm assuming, and you seem like you're responsible when you're out there, or someone who's been properly educated or who does appreciate what they're seeing. Well, they're not the problem. But I remember when I was a young man, and I remember going down to the creek. And this is a terrible confession, but it's one of the things you do. Catching the big creek chub. They used to catch creek chub. They were a foot long with big old horns on them, and they're all gone. And one of the things we would do because we didn't appreciate what we have, and we take those creek chubs and we do terrible things to them. That's where they are. Or we catch a whole bunch of salamanders or tree frogs, and they would all, or a bunch of snakes. And we didn't know what we were doing. You put them in and they ended up dying, and you're like, but it is because young boys will be young boys for one thing, and the other thing is our disconnection. The average person is disconnected from their environment, so it is a bit of a danger, regardless of what anybody wants to say. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but if you're one of these city boys or even one of these country boys who's got a little bit of testosterone in you and is not thinking quite right, well, you're a dangerous creature to all the other creatures, let alone to your own fellow man. But so, things happen. Right?
There's a lot of ways to look at that, but I think that environmentalists tend to leave the human element out of the equation, and they consider us to be an invader. But that's not the case, that we're a part of this earth as well.
Right.
We can alter things according to our will a lot of times, but if that's the case and they get altered, that's because we live on the earth and we altered something else because of our dominance or mastery. And that's going on this earth long before man. That one species dominate over another, and one may eventually disappear. But then new ones come up for wherever they come from, and so we don't even have the same animals living now that lived 10,000 years ago. And we had nothing to do with most of that. It's just that the earth itself is a living, breathing entity. And when I say that, it's not an animal like that type of thing, but every living thing has an electrical field around it. Our muscles move by electricity. Our thoughts, our brains have electricity in them. And when you take it all as a whole, all the millions of living things on the earth, then they combine to have a field that surrounds the entire Earth of the essences of life, the electric signals of life, and so it moves in and out, and up and down, and all around, and it changes, and you can't really blame ourselves for all of that. It's I believe in soul searching, but I don't believe in soul searching 100% of the time. We're a part of this earth.
Absolutely.
And if we do change some things, then let God's will be done. Because we're not strangers here.
Right.
So when we build a house, we build it exactly like we want it, and if something's in the way, we move it out of the way. But it's not an invasion of the earth to do that.
Well, no, but I think we could definitely do it in a little more sensible way, just like what I was,
Yeah, as a whole, yeah, I think so. But we should look for ways.
And we could teach our children to be like the, Now, saying that, the Native Americans, one of the most, if everybody gets a chance to, read about what it was like prior to, quote unquote, the discovery of the New World of Christopher Columbus time forward, but prior to it, or even during that time period, the Native Americans, they managed to, vast areas like the East. The forest of their time doesn't look anything like ours. They burnt vast swaths of the undergrowth in order to maintain good hunting grounds for elk, deer, and even woodland bison. There used to be woodland bison where I live today, and there's nothing of the sort now. But
there's species of trees that won't hardly germinate. The seeds won't germinate unless they have a fire.
Right.
The fire liberates the seed. They didn't know that till recent years in California. They want to know why the redwoods wasn't coming back. Well, I think they found out by accident that as soon as a fire passed over, the darn seeds was going everywhere. But they had nearly stopped all the fires. So that's the reason why you could get spruce to go, but redwoods would hardly germinate. Now they know, so they let fires burn if it don't involve homes and stuff. They let it go because it actually is good for the environment to be able to pass through once in a while with some fire. Don't hurt the big trees, the big redwoods. They got thick bark.
Right. These issues that we talk about, cryptozoology, is fast. It's more than just the story, the story necessarily about the creature, but it's about the whole holistic approach to the whole thing. It's like when you look at carbon dioxide and there's global warming and the world's ending and all. And then you're like, well, if the carbon dioxide, if there's so much of going up in the quote unquote air in the atmosphere, and well, then our plants should be like 3 or 4 times the size of it because they love it. You know what I mean? It causes them to grow. So I know there's other elements, there's other gases along with when it comes to emission and all that kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is that it's the sea and the ocean and also plants love it, so they need it.
I'm looking at a fossil stromatolite that I have that is about 3.5 billion years old. And it was the first life on Earth were stromatolites, and they are just absolute oxygen machines. They take in so much carbon dioxide and produce so much oxygen. Most of the oxygen that we breathe right now was originally made by stromatolites. And you're talking about a tree puts out so much oxygen. One little small stromatolite put out 10 times that much. And that's what did the original alteration of the Earth from that high carbon dioxide environment and put out the oxygen for the animals to breathe. and the Earth has been a living machine, ever since then. Satellites first, and then everything else came.
Right.
So it's that's why I say that the Earth is in itself an entity. It's the combined effects of everything that lives. They call it biosphere.
Right.
But it's also it's also electric fields, and they say that the fields of the Earth is that there is the atmosphere, and then there is in India the rishis say that there are two atmospheres around the Earth. There's the atmosphere of gas, and then there's the atmosphere of energy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what they're talking about. So we live in a kind of a special place.
Yeah, sounds like similar to what Tesla was saying as well. So, and it seems to be quite evident that there is just what you're saying. Makes you
I'm glad to be here. I mean, I see people that have this craving to go into space, and that's good. But so far they've had to take everything they needed with them. They haven't found a place that could harbor anybody on its own. Right. It's pretty clear that the Earth is special. At one time, science was trying to minimize that and say that we're nothing special. But as time has gone by, they did these huge, expensive searches for different planets and stuff. They began to realize that, well, yeah, there's other planets, but there's that signature of life is not on those other planets.
Right.
So you can watch for oxygen. We can get it in the spectrum of a planet. If there's not free oxygen, then it's not any kind of life that we know, because life lives off of oxygen. You got to have free oxygen. It's in the dead worlds, oxygen is all combined with other elements to make oxide. There's nothing in the spectrum.
Right.
So it's just we're and when it comes to the Earth, that you cannot put a limit on what the Earth has on it. It say, well, there is no Bigfoot. There's no evidence of Bigfoot. Well, don't say that there is no Bigfoot. It just hasn't been found. But the Earth is capable of supporting a Bigfoot. And all of the.
Do we know for certain, MK? Do we know for certain? A lot of things you said. We could have interesting discussions, let's say the least, about what other things you just said. But let's just stay on with the topic of Bigfoot. Do we know for certain that it's never been found? Do we know for certain?
I know for certain that it has.
Okay.
That goes to the level of acceptance. What it takes for science to accept it is very high for a Bigfoot. They raised the bar way beyond other things.
Right. Well, one of the things that I find, it's like, especially the high priest. I call him the high priest of scientism. There's actually a religion of science at this point. When you all together, I mean, people take it way too far, and part of their being gatekeepers, if you will, is to. It seems to me that a lot of times their job is not really to tell you the truth, but to tell you the opposite. It's like, well, I know this. A lot of people say that maybe you've taken it too far, but if we look at history and if we just look at present day, and all the things that we've dealt with, and it doesn't matter what field it is, there's a lot of things that they're keeping from us for whatever reason. It may maintain their own paradigm and their own belief or religion philosophies of what the world is, instead of that could be one thing. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why to keep this from people. The reality of this apparently amazing creature. And it's, here you got a guy like you. Well, I'm looking at, and I know that you have your detractors from researching you, just like anybody else that opens their mouth and makes a stance on something. So, but when you say it has been found, would you expand upon that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's just in my own experience. It's October a year ago, last October. I went down there and I found 15 tracks that could not have been that of a human. They were too deep. They were the substrate was dry and packed, and I couldn't even make a half-inch deep print stomping. And these tracks were 4 inches deep. Well, something made those tracks. If you want to be a skeptic to the point where you don't believe your own eyes, well, then that's carrying skepticism too far. Skepticism is designed to protect you from being flim-flam. It's not designed to beat a flim-flam. Healthy skepticism, and then there's flaming skepticism. And that flaming skepticism is you don't accept anything. It's like a bobblehead doll that the head only moves sideways. It's just constantly saying no. And that doesn't serve any purpose but to keep pushing you 2 steps back. I've seen enough personally, and I know some of the experiences of others. I've seen enough through film and video that Bigfoot does exist. It's reticent, and there may be other elements of its existence that we don't understand, but you have to believe your own eyes. We see every day, there used to be programs come up on the science channels where they prove that your eyes can fool you. You can do this right here and that. But we rely on our eyes. I mean, I'm not dead, and I've crossed countless intersections, but my eyes kept me from being run over. And I've relied on those eyes, and I see those tracks, and they're 4 inches deep. I know something extraordinary made those tracks, and they're bipedal. So, it's whatever did it was 2 days or less having come through there. So,
right.
It doesn't. Go ahead.
What is? I mean, and if you don't have to go down this road, if you don't want to, because I know if by going down this road, then if your detractors find out, they're going to crucify you for it. But what would be? Do you have any theories about what we're dealing with here, beyond whether it being, part man, part ape, or anything like that? But from your experience, because of its intellect and its ability to evade, and I'm not interested in for saying that the supernatural, like, this, that, or but if you feel that way, that's the case, then I'll respect that. I mean, I just want to know, from your time spending it, you spend a lot of time looking at these videos, going out there in the field, seeing the evidence, that we're dealing with something that's okay. So we can eliminate 90% of all the hoaxes and all the guys in a suit and all that kind of stuff. Problem is, there's still thousands of other folks, including my own brother, who says he saw it. We're up in the same area that close to the same area. Sometime somewhere outside of Oroville and Paradise, California. So, tell me from all, and I know you don't have a definitive answer. How could you? But from what you all the time you've been spending and all your research from all the different aspects, what are we dealing with?
Well, it depends on which part of the country you're from. It seems to be some differences, in the descriptions of Bigfoot from, say, down here in Texas or Louisiana or Mississippi compared to what's up there in Oroville or Mount Lassen, Mount Shasta, on over to Buck Creek, on up to Canada. it seems to be a difference. So I would be willing to say, or venture to say, that the Bigfoot is a pretty broad term that it's an umbrella that a lot of different things fit under that make a large track. The ones that are up in the Patterson film and up in the Pacific Northwest, those are very human-like, but there's certain things about them that tell you say no when it comes to being a human, and one is their weight. They just simply are otherworldly heavy, and they seem to do things or pull off things that leave people completely perplexed. Like a set of tracks might just suddenly end, or things like that. They live in the nether, the shadows. It's something you might get a glimpse of. You might hear something in the distance. You might find a track. If those people who spend a lot of time in those areas, and you get kind of tuned in to the wildlife and everything that's living there, and there's a biological hum. The combined noises of everything that's living, that's making noise, and that you get tuned into it, and when that changes, you get an instant kind of an alert. If you've ever watched a deer suddenly look up, and there's no reason to look up, but it suddenly looks up and looks around, it's that hum that's changed, and it gets alarmed, and it looks for the reason. You might pick that up if a Bigfoot comes around in your area. It may change, and you become alerted, and you start to look, and you might get a glimpse. Something may stop for a second, look at you, and then disappear into that morass that's underneath that canopy. In the area of the Bluff Creek, it's got a lot of what you call tree limbs, tops that tree falls, they call it, from snow. And you can disappear into that stuff so quickly, and you can appear out of it so quickly. So you have to be a person who's aware, and it seems like that's paranormal. But no, it's not really paranormal. It's normal, but it's something that you have to train your brain and your mind to be aware of. And I think a lot of Native Americans who live out there in those places, they know when things change, even though there's not anything that you could put your finger on. And they look up and look around, and they may actually see Bigfoot more than the person who doesn't live around there because of that.
Right.
It's whether you are an outsider looking in or an insider looking out. And if you're an insider looking out, then you're not too much different from Bigfoot. So they whatever reasons for Bigfoot to stay in his environment, to stay hidden, he's very, very good at it. But he doesn't go through without some change. He's detectable.
Well, an awful lot of people swear by it. If we could negate all the storytellers, we can negate all the people just looking for attention. We can negate I would throw in even, we talked earlier about people with PhDs, and I was going to throw in, just because somebody works for a government agency doesn't mean they're an honorable human being. Far from it. So, I'm more inclined to trust someone like you, MK, than I am someone with some letters behind their name and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? With their titles and their degrees.
Well, they're on the outside looking in.
Right.
You know, they can go down to the same place, but they don't stand a real good chance of seeing a Bigfoot. They don't know how to read the signs or pick up the. There's other people who go down there and they'll see them. They'll get a glimpse. You know, Bigfoot won't never give you much more than a glimpse, unless it's some extraordinary situation. But you know, even a glimpse is good because it tells you that it's there. You know, you're not going to ever know much more than that. You can't study them; they just don't sit still long enough. And they're rare anyway, especially in the low country. There are a few more up in the high country. The best way to see one at Bluff Creek is that be there in October. Because Bluff Creek is.
Do you think they're migrating?
Bluff Creek is, it's a highway that takes them to the Klamath. The Klamath has salmon runs. Salmon runs. You don't want to go in the spring salmon run because you can't get up there. The snow still deep. But in October, you can get in there, go down there, and just hang around because they're walking that creek. They're coming out of the high Siskiyous, and they're coming down the Bluff Creek drainage all the way to the Klamath. They're going to get a few salmon. And you might even find where they clean their fish. You can. I found it where they clean their fish.
No kidding. The big thing is spending time. That's the big thing. And we live in a culture and a society where the 99% of us are not going to be granted the privilege or the opportunity for whatever reason to have that time. So,
well, you're right. You're right. If you want to be there, they're not common. So if you want to have some kind of an intersection of between them and you got to go where they walk and stay there until they walk.
Right.
And down there in October, it's just kind of a, because of the salmon, it's a good time to be down there. And just try not to be invasive or loud. Just hang around. You'd be amazed. Your chances go way up.
Yeah, and clearly they seem intelligent enough to avoid us at pretty much at all costs, and so they have quite a bit of intelligence, and it makes you think about a lot of things. There's so many aspects to this story. One of the things I want to cover before we end this, I hope you will join me more than this time because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Okay.
For sure.
We do. We got a lot of stuff. But one of the things I want to talk about, if you don't mind, because it's on my mind right now, and I've been focusing on it, and it's something that I want to talk to you about because I find it fascinating, the theory and possibility of what people are calling chupacabras is really something that came from all the Tasmania or the other part of the world. Now, this is not improbable in any way, shape, or form, as I've just demonstrated with folks with other species that's like the snakefish, which actually comes from Asia and was imported over from as a some certain Asian restaurants, and some people like to eat the thing. Now it's everywhere. Just like this carp.
Yeah, the snakehead.
Yeah, the snakehead.
They said they put up a pretty good fight on the rod reel.
Oh, and they get huge. And we have our own native version of it, but then there's it doesn't quite get as big, and it's not quite as aggressive. But
we got the Japanese grass carp down here that have taken over a lot of these lakes down here. You drive your boat down in there, they'll knock you off your boat.
Yeah.
A 30-pound grass carp and jump up and flatten you.
Right. But the higher you go up the food chain, the less likely the higher up the food chain, that less likely the number of these creatures are going to be. So, anyways, when we look at this, the Tasmanian tiger and its possibilities of actually being at least some of the sightings that people are talking about in North America and Central America could actually be imported.
Yes, I was floored when I found out that there had been an organized effort to export Tasmanian tigers in the late 1800s and early 1900s. As they were dwindling to nothing in Tasmania, they were feverishly sending them out. And wherever they could find a ship that was leaving, that was willing to just open the crate and let him go. So that change, that's a game changer.
Oh yeah, it is.
When it comes to
Hey,
when someone sees an out of place animal, it's totally foreign to them, and that's what the people were trying to say. This is like nothing I've ever seen. It stood up on its hind leg and it hopped and it ripped open the throat of the goat and bled all the blood out. That's exactly what a Tasmanian tiger does.
Right. Given enough generations, and because of isolation, all that, they could even potentially change their look a little bit too, so that it's not quite as recognizable in North America. So.
Well, what if you had a Tasmanian tiger that came over and got some kind of skin problem from living in a foreign country that it never had over in Tasmania? It would be a pretty weird looking thing to see.
Right.
They could open their mouth 180 degrees.
Got a huge mouth.
Like nothing else had a gaping mouth like one of those tigers. And they had teeth that would just rip from stem to stern. You remember seeing some of the old films, while the ones in the zoo, the last ones?
I've been only because of you. Only because of you and on your YouTube channel.
Well, the guy that took those films got bitten badly by that Tasmanian tiger. You know, they were exactly what the sheep herder said. They would kill a sheep in short order and just keep killing them. And that's what got them in the shape that they're in now. But you know, no species deserves to go completely extinct. You know, I think the whole country of Tasmania and Australia have deep regrets about that. And there's people who devotedly look for them, but they may very well be in other places. They could be in the Caribbean. What if one of those folks stopped in Puerto Rico and just put this crate on a small boat, went to the beach, and opened the door?
Or they had an undocumented, say, kind of facilities or farm or whatever you want to call it, some kind of where they were trying to deliberately, they're doing, people are doing stuff all the time that you and I will never be privy of, ever knowing. And if we ever do,
yeah, that's true.
It might be 50 years down the road, and it's only from some paperwork and some hearsay. We don't know the whole story about a lot of things. So even the fact that maybe that we have opossums here and some forms of marsupials, so we have no idea that we had our own sometime. I mean, if you look at, especially if we're looking at some kind of a creature that's so aggressive as these, it could be quite plausible that they just not going to tell people too much about it because of many of the ramifications, especially when we're talking about domesticated husbandry and its need, our need to consume meat and everything else. Do they really want to tell you that the full story. Would you want to? Say you were in a position to pretty much be in control and power to kind of dictate the official narrative about things. Would it be to your advantage to say not to tell you to other people? I think this plays along with Bigfoot too, and a lot of other cryptoid creatures. It's kind of to their advantage to kind of consume and waste our time, if you will. I'm not saying that it's a waste of time to talk about it, but it's like, while we're talking about all these fringe things and all these different things, they're going ahead with their own agendas. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying for you and I, the average guy, we're wasting our time, but it could be to their advantage to even have these sort of things in play. So it's just, it's not, it's the possibility. It's one more possibility why things are the way they are, and why would they? I mean, there's some really, let's face it, MK, there's some real sick dudes out there. They wouldn't have a problem to say, well, let's get a bunch of these things. What are we going to do with this? Well, if I have the power and all that, well, I'm going to put some in, Texas and some in this place and that place, and I ain't going to tell nobody about anything, and I'm just going to find out what happens.
That is exactly right. At the time that they were going extinct, the world travel was coming into its own, and ships were going all over the world, and for a few bucks, they would take one and let it go somewhere. It's possible, very possible, that some of the sightings that they see of chupacabras and the way they describe them, it could be a thylacine that's just out of place. It's not in its environment. Nobody's ever seen it before, and they don't know what they're looking at, but they only know that it's strange.
Right.
A little bit scary because they can rip open the throat of a animal so fast and just bleed him out. So that they're like a top predator, and they can get up on their little hind legs, on their little kangaroo type feet, and do a little hop if they want to, and keep their heads up where they can see above brush.
Uh-huh.
And it's a perfect description of a chupacabra.
Yeah. Did you see the video of the Thylacine sighting in Western Victoria in 2008?
Yeah, if you go on my WordPress site, you'll see stabilizations of that.
Right. What do you think?
I think it's hard to say the reason why, because most of the time a thylacine does not have stripes on its tail. You may have one stripe at the very upper end of it, but that seems to have stripes.
Look at the length of that. Look at the length of that tail of that creature, and look at the top of it. What else could it be?
If you look at that right there in front of that house, there's a wall made of louvers, like blinds that have turned up on their ends. It's got louvers, and it's very possible that those stripes on the tail are shadows of that, coming across the creature, and it just runs through those shadows. But I believe that it's a good possibility that it is a tiger, and I base it upon this, that a tiger has a rump extension. When you see them in profile, you'll see that the tail is not just attached to the rear end like a dog or a cat. It's attached to a mass of flesh that actually extends the rump out like in the shape of a cone. And that seems to be on that subject. So, I will put that as a high probability, even though the video is not that great.
Right. Well, like you said, you don't necessarily need to even have the stripes to verify that.
No, there's thylacines that they have mounted that have hardly any stripes at all.
Right.
It just depends on the individual, but they all have the rump extension.
and you see that the way it's walking, some people might say, well, it's injured, and it does kind of look like it could be possibly injured, but when you look at it, just the way it's hopping and the length of the back legs. I'm sorry, but I don't know.
They're like cousins to the kangaroo.
Right.
And they can get up on their back legs and just sit there with the front legs in front of them.
How long and how high how long are they and how high can they stand? You have any ideas?
Well, to tell you the truth, if you look at those old films, you can see that they will get up pretty tall. They get up chest high. And they get a pretty good view, of that. When they get up like that, if they're in the brush, and they'll stand up there and just stand. I mean, they can stand, they can walk, they can hop. So that's it's hard to imagine that all of them would be killed out, if for no other reason because they're pretty good in their own environment. You got to think that some of them would have been savvy enough to avoid being shot, but it's like so many other things, though. They see the sign of them. The sign of them's there. They'll find something killed. It'd be the textbook, have it bled out, rip the throat open, but they don't find the actual animal. They just find where one has been and left this textbook type of killing victim. Then you kind of look around. Well, somewhere out there, somewhere, and I think the whole world is really pulling for the thylacine. That they could somehow recover. I know that the ivory bill has been declared extinct 3 different times. Right now, it is extinct. About 10 years ago, they took it off the extinction list when Cornell University allegedly found one and videotaped one in swamps up in Arkansas. But since then, that's disputed. But ivory bills were rare when the first white people came to this country. Native Americans had kind of exploited them. They're like a monogamous bird, and you kill one or the other, and you kill a generation. And Native Americans, they were so pretty that they would skin the pelts with the feathers in them and make these beautiful ornaments to wear on their belts. And the Native Americans that were out in the swamps of Mississippi came from Illinois. They were run out of there by the Iroquois. So you had an area that was like a refuge for ivory bills. Suddenly it's become full of people. And they all really liked those ivory bill belts. So
we used to have a native eastern parakeet, and they wiped it out. I mean, they had vast, huge, what do they call them? I don't want to say schools. What do they call them?
Flocks.
Flocks. Thank you. How did I mess that up? Flocks. But yeah, like, and I think it was, they say by 1850, around that time period, they were completely extinct. But they used to be all over the place, and they just, what happened was, because of their communal nature, they all you had to do was shoot one, and the rest of them would tend to it, and then they just either net them or just blow the heck out of them. And back then in the day, it's kind of like the attitude, which I understand why. You see, like the wild boar in like Florida and other places where it's open season all year round because of what they cause problems. But back then, 150 years ago, that's a big deal, especially with our European brothers, to just hey, let's go out hunting, and hunting was poaching or just basically target practice. And you know what I mean? We have to be honest about it. That's the way it was. So you never know.
Well, when Europeans came here, there was a wild dog that lived here, and nobody knew about it because it looked so much like a domestic dog. It looked like a dingo. It was a golden color with the tail curled up, square head. And there was a man who actually is in our modern times when it got discovered. This expert on wild dogs was watching this yellow dog that these people had adopted. It had just wandered up to the house. And he watched, it had puppies, and he watched that female dog regurgitate food for those pups. And he instantly knew this was not a tame animal. This is a wild dog. And he got that dog and did some testing and stuff and discovered that it was indigenous to the United States. It had been overlooked because people thought they were looking at just an escaped animal or one that's just gone feral. And now he brought the entire breed back. You can actually purchase a Carolina dog, Carolina wild dog. Thanks to this man's expertise and his observing abilities, we have that dog back. It's brought back from the brink. Great dogs, too. Great dogs. It's not a wolf. It's a genuine indigenous dog to North America.
No
great
kidding.
Story.
Yeah, well, it's the first time I've heard of this. That's great. So there's something new to learn. And I would really like this to continue, but unfortunately, it's probably a good time to stop this particular recording.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, back to like the Tasmanian tiger too. There's always that question too, because you never know how big these things can get. And then there's that story of the dog man, and how many of these things could possibly be what we're thinking about, what people are thinking about, because knowing that these things can stand and they don't seem to have a problem to stretch out on a.
So that's why you don't blow those stories off.
No.
Whether you believe them or not, you don't blow them off. You take them at face value because that explanation's out there somewhere.
Yeah. Hey, what would you have time next week to do part 3 of this or part 2 or whatever?
Sure.
Okay. I got time. Let's see. Well, Monday I don't have my son, and then I'm free Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't know. Do you have time Monday or Thursday to do part 3 of this?
Yeah, I do. Either you pick your day.
Well, why don't we do it Monday, and let's do it about the same time, unless there's a better time for you. And what time is best for you?
Okay.
Okay. And let's just continue.
How about 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock, the same time as we started today?
Yeah, Central Time.
Oh, Central Time. Okay, so that would be
which would be 2 o'clock your
2
time.
o'clock. Okay, we'll do that. So I'm enjoying this, MK, and I think that we could have some very insightful and thought-provoking conversation. Just think about it. I mean, how we, one thing I don't want this to be is this, how it is. Just people turn this stuff into a cottage industry, and I just don't want that to be there. I don't want to be part of that. I just want to know the truth. To the best of our ability, I want to figure out the truth about what's going on out there. I am not interested.
Well, the earth that we covered, we as humans have covered the earth, and we even hire people to explain the earth back to us. And sometimes we don't get our money's worth, so we have to do it ourselves.
Absolutely. In fact, most times we have to do it ourselves, if we're honest about it. That's the way it goes. So, okay, MC Davis. And I just not believe Troy. Oh my gosh, MK Davis. What am I saying, MC?
MK.
I'm so sorry.
That's not a made up thing. That's my actual Marlon Keith is my name.
Oh, good. So it has nothing to do with like MK Ultra or anything like that. It's actually your name.
No, nothing nefarious.
Nothing about mind control. That's good.
No.
So, anyways, folks,
other than trying to control my own.
Yeah, that's a heck of enough effort in itself, isn't it? At least for me.
It is.
So, look, we learned about the Carolina dog today, the Tasmanian tiger.
Yeah, Google it. There's a lot of good pictures on the net I'm so proud of this man and what he was able to do to bring back something that would have been lost for sure. You know, if nothing else, the dog would have been completely assimilated into other breeds. But he was able to get that pure breed. It's an amazing story.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of that, isn't there? Yeah, we talk more about that. So Monday.
That's the good we can do if we choose.
So
we'll talk at you Monday.
Okay, thank you, MK. So,
bye-bye.
Oh, you take care. So once again, just so I don't mess it all up, I call him MC Davis. Oh well, I'm human, folks. I really am. Dreadfully human. MC K. Davis. If you put Bigfoot with it, you'll find it for sure. It's did I say MC again? MK Davis, Bigfoot, and it's a Davis Report. .wordpress.com, and then also Greenwave2010FB is his YouTube channel. So check it out, man. It's really thought-provoking stuff what he's done. So